The hall was glowing with soft golden lights. Alien crystals hung from the high ceiling, pulsing gently with energy. Soft music filled the air, played by instruments that looked like floating jellyfish. This was not Earth, not even close. This was Sirella, home of the proud and powerful Cyrillan Empire. Jack adjusted the translator on his collar and took a deep breath. He was the first human invited to a royal dinner on Sirella. He had trained for this moment for months. He wore a dark, formal suit specially designed to show respect in Cyrillan culture. But deep inside, he was nervous. Across the long silver table sat Princess Varela. She was tall, over 7 feet, tanned, wore a gown made of glowing silk. Her lavender skin shimmered under the lights, and her silver hair was tied in long, elegant braids. Her golden eyes were fixed on Jack, calm but curious. The translator buzzed softly in his ear, turning her alien language into English. A servant offered Jack a glass of purple drink. He nodded and took a sip. The taste was like fire and honey. Next came the first course, a small cube that wriggled like jelly. He ate it with a forced smile, trying not to gag. Varela raised her glass and spoke in her native tongue. The translator whispered, "To peace and new bonds." Jack smiled and raised his own glass. "To friendship," he replied, but just as the words left his mouth, the translator blinked red. There was a tiny spark on the device, then a pause. Princess Varela tilted her head, surprised. Then she stood, her face changing. The hall went silent. Jack blinked, unsure what just happened. The translator buzzed again, slowly fixing the sentence he just said, but it was too late. Varela placed a hand over her heart, then over her stomach. The entire room gasped. Her maids bowed deeply, and her guards stepped forward. A moment later, a Cyrillan elder walked to the center of the hall and announced something in a deep voice. The translator caught only parts of it. Proposal. Accepted. Sacred law. Moon binding. Jack's heart raced. What proposal? What acceptance? He looked at the device, now blinking red. He tapped it, shook it, but it stayed broken. A man beside him leaned in and whispered, "You just proposed mating. Human." Jack froze. "No, I didn't," he said. "You did." In their language, the man replied, and the princess accepted. Guards moved toward Jack, not with weapons, but with gentle but firm hands. Varela walked around the table and stood in front of him. Her eyes were unreadable, no anger, no joy, just quiet decision. She looked at him and spoke slowly. "You ... My now," the translator managed to say, lagging behind her voice. Jack opened his mouth, trying to explain. It was a mistake. "I didn't mean," but the guards had already started leading him away. The guests whispered among themselves, some shocked, some amused, some angry. Behind him, Varela watched, silent. Jack could feel her eyes on his back. They brought him through the palace, down golden halls, and into a large room filled with glowing flowers and soft lights. It looked like a luxury prison. The doors closed behind him with a soft hiss. He was alone, confused and trapped. He sat on the edge of a soft round bed and stared at the broken translator in his hand. It was only supposed to help him say friendship. Some glitch must have turned it into a marriage proposal. But how? Jack leaned back and stared at the ceiling. His first mission on Sirella. And now? He was engaged to a 7-foot alien princess. And by their law, it seemed, there was no way out. Unless someone spoke up, unless he fixed this fast, he might lose more than his freedom. He might lose something even more personal, because, in Cyrillan culture, mating accepted meant one thing, and the countdown to the ceremonial night had already begun. Jack sat quietly in the middle of the soft, round bed, the glowing vines above him swaying gently as if breathing. The air smelled like fruit and fire, and he still didn't know what he'd done wrong. The translator lay beside him, its light completely off now, A dead piece of tech that had just changed his entire future. He replayed the moment over and over in his head. The toast, the smile, the words he spoke to friendship. He had said, so simple, so innocent, but something had gone wrong in the machine. Something had turned that toast into a proposal. And now, apparently, he belonged to the princess of an alien empire. The door opened with a soft hiss, and he jumped to his feet, expecting more guards, or maybe the Cyrillian king himself. But instead, two tall women walked in silently. Their skin the same soft lavender tone as Varella's. Their gowns shimmered like falling stars. And they both bowed deeply without speaking. They moved around the room, placing things near the bedfruits. Robes, soft glowing beads, small bowls of strange blue water. It looked like some kind of preparation, but for what, he wasn't sure. The taller one glanced at him with curiosity, but neither woman spoke. Wait, Jack said, stepping forward. Can you help me? Translator broken. I need to fix this. They looked at each other, confused. Then one of them gently pressed her finger to her lips, asking him to be quiet, then pointed to the corner of the room where a large stone basin was filling with warm mist. He followed her gaze, slowly understanding. This wasn't a prison cell. It was a royal suite. And they weren't guards. They were handmaidens. And this was his preparation chamber for the ceremonial night. Jack's heart pounded harder. He walked to the nearest wall panel and tapped it. No screen appeared, no tech interface. It was all organic here, part of the Cyrillian tradition. No human tools, no way to contact Earth, and time was running out. They left him alone. The doors closing behind them, and for a few moments, Jack just stood there in silence, unsure whether to scream or laugh. Then another sound broke the quiet. Knock, soft but steady, and then the door slid open again. It was her. Princess Varella stood in the doorway, her long silver hair falling down her back like a river of light. She was no longer in her formal gown, but something simpler, a thin, flowing robe that shimmered with her every breath. Jack's voice caught in his throat. He looked around, unsure what to say or do, but Varella raised a hand, slowly. Not in command, but in peace. She walked in, barefoot, her tall figure moving like a slow dance, her golden eyes never leaving his face. He stepped back, raising his hands. Listen, I didn't mean to propose, he said slowly. It was a translation error. I wanted to say friendship, not. Whatever came out, Varella tilted her head slightly. She touched the translator, still clipped to his shirt, and frowned. Her fingers brushed it gently, and a faint crackle of energy sparked beneath her touch. She spoke a few quiet words, but Jack didn't understand. The translator was dead. And now they were left with nothing but tone, body language, and eyes. She placed her hand over her chest, then slowly pointed to him. Jack shook his head, trying to explain again, but she stepped closer, and for a moment he saw something in her eyes, not desire, not anger, but something like loneliness. She reached out, very slowly, and took his hand. Lifting it gently and placing it against her heart, it beat fast, just like his. Then she pointed to the ceiling, where a large moon had started to glow through the transparent vines. The ceremonial night, it was coming, and fast. Jack stepped back again, trying to make space, trying to think, but his mind was spinning, and her warmth stayed in his palm like a brand. She whispered a word, a soft breath of sound he didn't understand. But somehow, it felt like a question, not an order, not a command, a question. He stared into her eyes. Unsure of the answer, the door opened once more, and an elder Cyrillian male stepped inside. His robe decorated with ancient runes, his voice deep and firm. He said something serious, something that felt final. Varella looked at Jack, then bowed her head briefly. Turning toward the elder, Jack watched them, helpless and silent. Then looked down at the translator still resting on the bed. He had one. Night left to fix everything, or accept it. But he didn't even know what it really was yet, and the moon outside was rising fast. Jack didn't sleep that night. The bed was too soft, too big, too full of strange scents. But more than that, his thoughts kept spinning like a broken engine. Outside the balcony window, the moon hung low and bright, casting a blue glow over everything. He sat on the edge of the bed, holding the broken translator in one hand, the useless device mocking him with its silence. He had tried everything, tapping, twisting, even gently hitting it, but nothing worked. The silence wasn't just quiet, it was dangerous. No one had spoken to him clearly in hours. Everything was smiles, nods, gentle gestures. But behind those looks, he could feel the pressure building, the clock ticking. Jack needed to get out, at least long enough to reach a CUM panel or find another translator unit. Something that would let him explain the truth that it was all a misunderstanding, a tech failure, not some romantic gesture meant to claim a princess. He walked to the edge of the glowing wall, pressed his hand gently against it. Surface felt alive, warm and pulsing. Then, to his surprise, it shifted. A soft ripple moved across the wall and opened a small hidden panel, revealing a narrow hallway. Jack blinked, heart racing. Maybe the room wasn't a prison after all. Maybe it was just ceremonial. He stepped through, careful and quiet. The corridor was dim and empty, lit by soft white orbs floating just above the floor. The air was cool and carried the scent of something sharp and metallic. He moved fast but cautious, ears alert for voices or footsteps. Finally, he turned a corner and found a small chamber with glowing plants wrapped around a communication tree. He'd heard about this biotech used by the Cyrilons to speak across the empire. Jack approached it and placed his palm on the soft bark. "Access Earth Embassy," he whispered. "Emergency?" The tree pulsed red, then dimmed again. No connection. He gritted his teeth, looked around, and spotted another figure in the shadows, a short alien woman wrapped in dark robes, watching him silently from the corner, her face half hidden. Jack froze. She stepped closer and spoke in a whisper flawed but understandable. "You run from the binding." Jack nodded slowly. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean to propose." The translator glitched, he explained. The woman tilted her head, then reached into her robe and pulled out a small device, older than the one Jack had, but still glowing faintly. "A prototype," she said. "No glitch." Jack stared at her, confused. She handed him the device, and it came alive instantly. A green light blinking slowly. He activated it, and a soft voice spoke. "Translation log detected interference, pattern matched, manual override present." His breath caught. "Wait, you mean someone changed what I said?" The woman nodded once, slowly. "Politics," she said. "Some want the princess bound to you for power." Jack couldn't believe it. He had been used, framed by a silent war he never knew existed. "Why help me?" he asked. The woman leaned in, voice even lower. "Because she doesn't deserve this either." Before he could ask more, loud footsteps echoed down the corridor. The woman pushed him back toward the hidden hall. "Go, now return, before they know," she whispered, vanishing into the shadows again. Jack ran, heart pounding. Holding the new translator close, he reached the suite just seconds before the main door slid open. And there she was. Princess Varela stood in the doorway again, her silver hair damp, her eyes soft but searching. She looked at him, then at the small device in his hand. Her expression shifted just for a second, a flicker of something like pain. She stepped forward slowly and said a single word. "Why?" The device picked it up clearly, the new translator working. Jack swallowed, not knowing where to begin. He took a breath and said, "I didn't want to lie. Someone made the glitch happen, on purpose." Varella's eyes narrowed slightly, her gaze moving to the door as if sensing someone was watching. Jack stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We've both been used, haven't we?" Varela didn't speak, but her shoulders dropped slightly, her head tilting as if in silent agreement. For a moment, the distance between them felt smaller, not just in height, but in pain. She turned away, walking toward the edge of the suite, where the moonlight poured in like silver rain. Jack stood still, unsure what she would do next. Then she spoke again, her voice clear and low. "If we do not follow the law, I lose my throne. You may lose your life." Jack's hands curled into fists at his sides. He had come for peace. Now he stood in the middle of royal politics, manipulation, and a law that demanded more than just words. And the worst part, the countdown was still going. The ceremonial night was approaching fast, and the entire empire was watching. Jack didn't just need to escape. He needed to decide, would he fight this, or stay and rewrite what was meant to break them both? The next morning began. With silence, no guards, no messengers, no sound at all. Even the glowing vines outside the balcony seemed to sway more slowly. As if the palace itself was holding its breath, Jack sat near the window, the new translator hidden beneath his tunic. He hadn't slept. He kept thinking about the woman in the hallway, about what she said, that someone had wanted this, that. Both he and the princess were pawns. It wasn't just a glitch, it was a setup. But the bigger question still burned in his chest. Why him? The door hissed softly and opened again. But this time, it wasn't a servant or a guard. It was Varela, alone. She looked tired. Her silver hair was still braided, but loose at the ends. Her royal glow dimmed just a little. She closed the door behind her slowly and walked toward him, her steps lighter than before. Jack stood up quickly, unsure of what she wanted, unsure of what to say. But before he could open his mouth, she lifted her hand, not to stop him, but to offer something. A small glowing orb rested in her palm, gently pulsing with blue light. It floated a little as she released it, and the moment it activated, her voice came through the translator clearly. "I found this in the archives," she said softly. "Old tech, like yours." Jack nodded. "I found one too," he said, showing her the hidden device clipped inside his sleeve. She looked at it, then at him. "Then you know," she said, not as a question, but as a statement. Jack stepped closer. "Yes, I know someone sabotaged the translator. They wanted this union to happen." Varela's shoulders relaxed. "And now we are trapped inside a promise neither of us made," she said quietly. Jack hesitated. "Do you want it?" Varela looked up at him slowly, her golden eyes unreadable. "At first, no," she said. "But now, I don't know what I want anymore." She walked past him and sat down beside the balcony, the soft wind brushing her long robes gently. Jack followed and sat beside her, leaving space between them. "There are 3 royal factions," she explained. "My engagement to you gives one side more control, more votes in the council. They see your species as easy to bend, emotional, weak." Jack let out a dry laugh. "Yeah, we get that a lot." Varela gave a small smile, the first real one he had seen. "They don't know you," she said. "But I do." Now, they sat there for a long moment, not speaking, just listening to the wind. Then she whispered, "If I walk away from this, I lose the right to lead. My father will name my cousin heir, and I will be sent off-world as a servant or worse." Jack turned to her. "You don't deserve that." Her eyes met his. "Neither do you." They both fell silent again, the translator softly humming between them. "You could run," she said suddenly, "tonight. Before the binding, Jack stared at her. "And what about you?" She shrugged. "I stay. I take the shame. Maybe exile." Jack stood up and began pacing. "There's got to be another way. Some clause, a loophole." "There is one," she said slowly. "But it's dangerous." He turned to her quickly. "Tell me." She stood, walked to a small carved table, and picked up a glowing scroll. "Challenge the law. In public, in front of the council, say the union was forced by deception. They will demand proof." "I have proof," he said. Lifting the hacked translator, she shook her head. "No, that won't be enough. The council will only listen to direct action." "What kind of action?" She looked at him with a strange, unreadable expression. "You must stand in front of them and refuse me. Not the law, not the politics me." Jack blinked. "What? If you reject me in front of them, they will be forced to cancel the bond? But it will destroy me." Jack's breath caught in his throat. "Varela, you were never meant to be here," she said quietly. "But you are. And now I must face what that means." The moon outside began to rise again. Brighter than before, the glow spreading across the palace walls like liquid fire. She stepped closer, so close he could hear her breath. "I was never given a choice, but now I will give one to you." She gently reached for his hand and placed something in it. A small, curved blade, ceremonial, delicate but sharp. "Cut the bond in public," she said. "If you wish to walk away." Jack looked at the blade, then up at her face, so strong yet trembling slightly. She didn't say anything else. She just turned and walked away, her robe trailing softly behind her. The door closed, and he was left standing there, alone, holding a blade and a choice. Jack didn't move for a long time. The ceremonial blade rested in his hand like it weighed 1,000 stones. The curved edge glowed softly, reflecting the rising moonlight coming through the open balcony. His fingers curled around it, not in anger, but confusion. He had a choice now, a real one. Varela had given him that. Not the council, not the law, not the empire, just her. He walked back inside the chamber. The air felt heavier now, thick with expectation. A strange rhythm pulsed through. The walls, like the palace itself, was breathing with tension. Every moment brought him closer to the binding ceremony. And he still didn't know what he'd do. Jack placed the blade on a table and stared at it. He didn't want to hurt her. Not after what she said. Not after seeing the fear she hid beneath all that royal grace. But if he didn't cut the bond, the marriage would be locked forever, and everything his future. Her freedom would vanish. Suddenly, the wall shifted open again, but it wasn't Varela this time. It was the robed woman from before, the one who had warned him in the hallway. Her eyes locked onto the blade instantly. "You still have time," she whispered, stepping closer. "You must do it in front of the council, or the law will consume." "You both?" Jack pointed at her, his voice low and firm. "You knew all along, didn't you, that I was the target?" She gave a slow nod. "Yes." "Your arrival was no accident. They tested the translator days before the dinner. It failed, only once when programmed manually." Jack's heart dropped. "You mean someone entered my words by hand?" "Yes," she said. "They wanted her bound to a human. Someone the council sees as controllable." He laughed once, bitter. "They really don't know humans." "No," she said, "but you are not the one they fear." "She is." Jack paused. "What?" The woman stepped closer and whispered. "She is stronger than they expected, smarter, kinder, and dangerous to those who love power more than peace." Jack looked at the blade again. "If I cut the bond, she loses everything. But if you don't," the woman warned, "you both lose yourselves." She turned to leave, fading into the shadows like smoke, her voice echoing. "They will gather at Moonpeak. If you mean to act, that is the only moment." Jack stood in the middle of the room for what felt like an hour, then slowly picked up the blade again. His steps were quiet as he left the suite. No guards stopped him. No alarms rang. The palace had already accepted what was coming. He moved through the glowing corridors toward the council hall, his boots echoing faintly against the smooth floor. Ahead of him, giant doors opened slowly, revealing the great chamber. Hundreds of Cyrillans stood inside. Noble families, council leaders, warriors and advisors all gathered under the sacred dome, and at the center stood Varela. She wore a royal gown of pale silver and blue, her hair woven with golden threads. Her eyes locked onto Jack the moment he entered, and in them was no fear, no anger, only silence. He walked toward her, slowly, deliberately, the blade still hidden in his palm. The crowd whispered around them like a wave of wind. The elder stepped forward, raising a ceremonial staff. "Has the bond been accepted?" he asked, voice booming across the chamber. Everyone turned to Jack, waiting. He looked at Varela, at the gown she wore, the fire she carried in her chest, the quiet defiance that no one else saw. He opened his hand, raised the blade, and stepped. Beside her, gasps echoed through the room. Eyes widened. Varela didn't flinch. She didn't even breathe. Jack turned toward the council, raised the blade high, and instead of cutting the silk ribbon between them, he dropped the blade to the floor. It clattered loudly, breaking the silence. Jack spoke clearly. "I came here as a guest," he said, "but I was made a prisoner of your law. I was tricked into a bond I never chose." He paused, then turned toward Varela again. "But now, I choose." The council murmured, but no one interrupted. "I choose not because of your politics," Jack said, "not because of the mistake, not because of fear. One choose her because she gave me the only honest choice I've been given since I arrived." Varela's eyes filled with something sharp and wet emotion she had hidden too long. The council began to shout, some in anger, some in shock, others in confusion, but the elder raised his hand, then let the bond stand. He said finally, voice shaking, "But let it be known, Nit was accepted by free will." And with that, everything changed. Not because of the law, not because of the binding night, but because for the first time someone broke the rules by choosing truth. And truth, on Cyrilla, was more rare than any jewel. The council chamber didn't go quiet right away. Voices rose like storm winds. Nobles shouting across the marble floor. Some demanded tradition. Others whispered about scandal. A few smiled. In secret approval, Jack stood still in the middle of it all, beside Varela, who hadn't moved since he dropped the blade. She was watching the council, not with fear, but with calm defiance. She had waited her whole life to be tested not with war, not with weapons, but with choice, and for the first time, someone had chosen her without being forced. The elder raised his staff again, striking the floor twice. A heavy echo filled the air. The chamber began to settle. "Let it be recorded," he said. The bond was not claimed by accident, but by will. He turned toward Jack and Varela, his expression unreadable. "You are now joined by law and declaration." Jack almost laughed, not out of joy, but disbelief. 1 hour ago, he was a guest on an alien world. Now he stood beside a princess, bonded by a broken device and a choice he hadn't seen coming. As the nobles left the chamber in slow waves, Varela finally turned to him, her voice low. "You did not cut the bond." Jack met her eyes. "No, I didn't." She nodded. "Then we are one, whether we want it or not." He raised an eyebrow. "Do you want it?" She didn't answer, just walked ahead, leaving him in the center of the now empty room. Later that night, the celebration began, not by her choice, not by his, but by tradition. Lanterns lit the palace. Music echoed through the crystal towers, and dancers floated across glowing platforms. Jack sat on a wide balcony, alone, the night air brushing past him like cold silk. The bond may have been declared official, but no one knew what came next. He didn't expect to see her again that evening, not after the public storm they had just survived, but near midnight she arrived. Wearing no crown, no jewelry, no glowing fabrics, just a soft robe, plain and quiet. She walked to the edge of the balcony and stared at the moons. The silence between them was not heavy, but strange, like both of them were waiting for something real to happen. Jack finally broke it. "You should be with the council." She didn't look at him. "I should be 100 things," she said, "but I am only one woman." He stood slowly. "I didn't want to humiliate you." "You didn't," she replied. "You saved me." Jack didn't expect that answer. "I thought I trapped you in this bond." Varela turned toward him, eyes soft now. "No walls, no pride. I was born into this cage long before you arrived. But today, you didn't lock the door tighter. You opened it." He looked down, unsure how to reply. "I don't know what I am to you." She continued, stepping closer. "A stranger, a mistake. A mission gone wrong, but to me, you are the first person who ever looked at me and saw me, not just my title." Jack felt something tighten in his chest. Not fear, not desire, just something heavy and honest. She reached out slowly, and this time he didn't pull away. Their hands met gently, fingers curling around each other with quiet weight. The bond ceremony was supposed to be full of fire, music, chanting, but for them, it was this: two people under a sky of stars, holding hands, saying nothing, and meaning everything. Varela leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "The palace expects us to share a bed tonight. To show the bond is real." Jack tensed slightly, not from discomfort, but from uncertainty. "And if we don't, then they'll call it weakness," she said. "They'll say you shamed me, that you don't respect Cyrillian ways, and what do you want?" He asked softly. She stepped even closer. "I want to lie beside someone who doesn't see me as a crown, or a law, or a problem to fix." Jack's breath caught. "Then you should stay," he whispered. "Because I don't see any of that." And so she stayed. Not as a queen, not as a prisoner, not even as a bride, but as someone trying to understand what it meant to finally be free. Beside someone who never planned to be her freedom. The room was quiet that night. No guards, no orders, no translator needed. Just warmth and silence, and two hearts learning to beat beside each other. Slowly, not because of law or fate or tradition, but because it felt right. The first light of morning slipped through the crystal windows, painting soft gold across the room. Varela opened her eyes slowly, not to alarms or ceremony, but to quiet. Her fingers still curled gently beside Jack's, his breathing calm. Even in sleep, she didn't move for a long time. Just watched him, the way his face held no fear. No demand, no mask. She had shared beds before, ceremonial, strategic, cold, but this was something else, something real. Jack stirred as the warmth touched his face, eyes blinking open to find her already awake. They didn't speak at first. The silence was full, not empty. Then he whispered, "Morning." She gave a small nod, a smile barely there. "No one's knocking, no shouting." He added, "Did the world forget us?" She stood slowly, walking to the edge of the balcony. "No," she said. "They're waiting, watching. But they're quiet because they don't know what to make of us now." Jack joined her, the air cool and fresh. The two moons low in the sky, fading behind the towers. "What happens now?" he asked. She looked out over the city. "Now, they expect us to rule together, as if the bond makes us stronger." He nodded slowly. "And does it?" She didn't answer right away, then turned to face him fully. "I think it does, but not because of law or blood," she said. "Because last night, you didn't take anything from me, not power, not pride, not my choice. Jack's expression softened. I didn't come here to take. Varela, I just wanted peace, and you gave it, she said quietly. More than any treaty ever could. The doors slid open behind them. Not rushed, not aggressive, just gentle. A single messenger stood there, holding a small black case. The royal seal glowing on its surface. He bowed deeply and stepped forward. From the High Council, he said, voice trembling slightly. An invitation. And a test. Jack took the case and opened it. Inside was a ceremonial key made of crystal and iron, ancient, glowing faintly. Varela leaned in, eyes narrowing. That's the right of permanence, she said. They want to make it final. Unbreakable, the kind of bond no one in history has reversed. Jack looked at her. They're forcing it again, she nodded slowly. Yes, but this time? They want the story to end the way they can control. Jack stared at the key. Then, close the case gently. What if we don't go? Then they'll say, we are weak, she said, or that we're planning rebellion. Jack thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. Then let's give them a new story. They didn't arrive at the council hall in royal robes, nor with guards. Varela wore a simple tunic. Jack wore his old diplomatic jackets, cuffed and real. They walked side by side, no throne between them, no barrier. The chamber was already full. Nobles lined the walls. Scrolls were ready. Historians waiting to write their names into law. Varela stepped forward first, her voice calm. We reject the right of permanence, she said. Gasps rang out. Jack joined her at the center. Not because we reject each other, he said, but because we reject the lie that power must be forced. The elder counselor stood, eyes sharp. Then you break the bond. Varela held Jack's hand tightly. No, she said. We keep it, but on our terms. The silence was deep now. Thick. No ceremony, Jack added. No control, no threats. The room didn't cheer, didn't explode in rage. It just went still because they had done something no one expected. They took back the story, that night in the quiet of their shared room. Jack and Varela sat by the window, stars glowing above. You know, Jack said, this all started because of a broken translator. She laughed softly. Yes, and still. You managed to say the one thing I never heard before. He looked at her, confused. What was that? That I mattered. She whispered. He took her hand again, gently. You always did. No moonlight ceremony, no final scroll, no roaring crowd. Just two voices, one truth, and a bond not made by law, but by choice.